Hello and welcome to the Supercharge Yourselves Philosophy Podcast, the show where I help you drive more opportunities, bigger deals, and faster wins. I'm Fergal Carroll, and today I'm really delighted to chat with a special guest, Silvia Li. Silvia is the founder of BrainSells Global, where she blends neuroscience, trust building, and strategy to help companies close bigger deals faster and with way more meaning. She's worked with thousands of sales pros and leaders across 24 countries, and her programs have literally doubled revenues for some clients. From selling at age 10 in Hong Kong to transforming Fortune 500 sales teams, Silvia brings a global perspective, serious expertise, and a ton of heart. Silvia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Fergal. It's great to see you and happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. And listen, I've got to start with this one, Silvia. Apparently, you've been selling since the age of 10, right? And I'm really keen. What was little Silvia selling, and
Well,
how has that influenced the rest of your sales life?
thank you for asking. It was my father's business that I was prospecting for. So I would go in on the weekends with him to his company, which was an import export company based in Sha Tin in Hong Kong, British Hong Kong at the time. And I would learn to type prospect letters on the old school typewriter. This is like the late 80s, early 90s. And I would literally sit there and type up letters like this and have the whiteout at the ready. And this was the type of typewriter where you had to manually push to go to the next line. So for the young listeners out there, that might be completely foreign to all of you. I literally would spend Saturday late mornings, early afternoons typing up prospect letters to outreach to prospective new clients for my father's business, which he always reminded me was what was feeding me. So I had a part in let's call it the commercial success of his venture.
So you've chalked off an early commercial success over the age of 10. Well done, you. Okay. I'm curious. So how have you ended up where you are today? So you've started out in what was then British Hong Kong, I
Mhm.
presume,
Yes.
and now you're in the US, right?
Yes, yeah, I've been in the US, for many, many years, and, in terms of the transition to a sales career, unlike most people, I chose to go into sales. So a lot of people I've met over the years say, "Well, I fell into it. I was tapped on the shoulder to do it." And yet I knew even at a young age that I wanted to be in business and interact with clients. So I saw the way my father turned a stranger into a client, then into a friend. And I was so fascinated by that, Fergal, in that I said I wanted to study that. I wanted to not only observe and study the interactions, yeah, I wanted to make it easier for others to do the same thing, make it easier for myself to do the same thing and add to it, right? Riff on it and add to it and improve it. That was something that I was keenly interested in even at a young age. And I think it had a lot to do with, frankly, at the time, the desire and curiosity for what else is out there in the world. So I saw that my father had clients from all over the world. And I thought business and connecting with prospects and clients would be my gateway, if you will, to the rest of the world. Hong Kong at the time was already very international. So I was already primed to seek out other people, right? People from other cultures, walks of life, etc. Yet, I saw my father get on the plane regularly and I said, I want to do that. So yeah, that's how I made a career, if you will, out of commercial success and selling and client engagement.
That's interesting because not many people these days would even consider a career in sales. It's like you say, you fall into sales. It's
Mhm.
almost an accident. And I've often felt that there's a bit of a barrier to sales in that some people think you've got to be this hunter type personality. And if you don't have that, sales is not for you, which I don't really believe is true. But where do you sit on the spectrum in terms of that hunter or farmer? Are you somewhere in between? How would you rate yourself?
I like to think of myself as a growth facilitator. So more about what are we co-creating or what are we creating or what are we generating, right? That would be different, more or better for both sides. It's interesting. As I reflect on the question, I do recall an instance in which I was interviewing with a head of sales and she really wanted me to answer point blank whether I'm a farmer or a hunter. Like, she, did not like my answer.
Absolute. One or the
Absolute,
other.
right? Yeah, it had to be binary for her. And I remember at the time, I really did already start to believe that we are in business, we're in sales, we are in, right, the walks of life that we've chosen to impact other people around us. So this notion of hunting, right, it just seems so one-sided. I didn't really like that. And farming didn't quite feel right either in that I'm highly type A, ID.
Yeah.
All right, I like to make things happen. I like results too, yet it just felt like a very limiting question to me. And I think at the time I didn't have the emotional maturity to recognize that there are people out there who just believe in that binary state of either you're a hunter or a farmer. That was a pivotal moment for my own awareness and development to go, hey, maybe there is another way that people are engaging clients, and I've seen it happen in my own world, in my with my own eyes, in my own domain. And so that was a pivotal moment for me, Virgo, in that I said, maybe there's another way to sell that's beyond the binary, right? Either or state. And there are people out there who are probably feeling similarly to the way I was feeling, in that I didn't want to bucket myself, right? And it's really at the end of the day about impacting people, clients in this case, prospective and future clients or current clients. And so that was a wake up call for me to go, hey, let me seek out what else is out there. So I didn't really quite answer your question, to be honest. I guess I'm an ambi.
I think you have because you're basically saying you don't want to be pigeonholed in either one, right? And I think a lot of people are very similar. And I know that your current business, you're in about 6 or 7 years now, but you had a journey to get to there. Maybe describe a little bit of that so we can understand how you've arrived at your current business.
I had always believed that for me to impact the sales discipline at large, I had to build up my skill sets, right? And I remember this was in the early 2000s. I had a terrific leader in my midst, and I shared with him my bold vision for changing the way we sell. And he said, Sylvia, you absolutely have the energy. You absolutely have the smarts. Yet you got to do the reps. You got to go around the block a couple more times for you to truly bring this kind of conviction that will motivate and energize other people. So that was when I decided that I just had to hunker down, learn the craft, if you will, build my craft over the years. So I spent over 15 years in corporate sales, large enterprise selling roles and sales leadership roles to build up that repertoire of skills and know-hows. And so the desire to I think what I now call bringing unconventional wisdoms to the conventional ways of selling has always been an interest area for me. And it really did take me some time to just develop the chops, as we say, right? Develop that conviction, that confidence, and just have the proof points, right? The pieces of evidence that I can now confidently and boldly share with others as, right, the unconventional wisdoms that led to greater success, 10x, 20x even.
So you put in the hard yards. You've done the 15 years. Yeah, you've put in those hard yards already. I love it. And tell me your new business name, Brain Cells. What a brilliant name. I need to understand how you've landed upon that name.
It was literally in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. It was during my 2-week New Year planning period, and it was the 2nd day that I was there, so it was literally January 2nd of 1 year. So, Brain Cells came about after I had initially started my LLC, so there is a predecessor, if you will, to Brain Cells. That was sort of the interim name. I just needed to invoice a client, and I needed a name. I needed to file with the IRS here in America. So anyway, I had an interim name. Yeah, I was seeking for a brand or a name that would really represent what I'm about, right? Make it self-evident to others that, I am about brain-based selling, and it's about making selling brain friendly for both buyer and seller. So long story short, Fergal, I was just so energized by the sun and the warmth in Mexico. I had just played pickleball the day before to great success and joy and fun. And I just woke up, I'm like, that's it. Brain cells. I know it sounds kind of strange to some people, yet it just literally came to me when I was in this state of right cognitive thinking, just creativity, this just higher order thinking. So yeah, I was just like, that's it. That's the name. That's the brand.
And what is the business?
So we are a consultancy and learning partner for organizations, sales organizations in particular, and leaders, business leaders, executive teams, leadership teams, in terms of how we teach them how to co-create with others. And that the point of work, the purpose of work is to facilitate growth in everything that we do, in every interaction that we're present in. So we like to think of ourselves as the, status quo shaker in terms of how sales and leadership is done, quote unquote, or how we lead ourselves, how we lead teams, the conversations that we're having with others, especially in the context of commercial success.
One of my passions is helping my clients grow their business with their existing clients. And this concept of co-creation, I believe, is a common theme that we share, because I really try and coach my clients that it starts with understanding the client's needs and initiatives. And from that, you can build a joint vision statement. So that co-creation comes in there. And then it's only when you kind of have those two in place that you can then move on and start to define some objectives for growth. So talk to me a little more about the practicalities, because I think this is where certainly my clients, I won't say they struggle, but they need a little guidance as to how do you go about starting this co-creation concept? How do I get closer to my clients? Because let's face it, clients are really busy. You're not the only supplier stroke vendor that they have. They have limited amount of time, and often that can be a bit of a restriction on getting closer to the client. So you must have seen these obstacles and practical issues in your own business, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and also as a frontline strategic account manager at one point in my career as well. So I have a lot of empathy for what you're describing in terms of what your clients are trying to unlock or generate different, better, more of. So I would start by sharing this thought, and it's from Brain Science, in that most people don't like losing autonomy. Put in simple words, people don't like to be told what to do. Yet a lot of times, and I've committed the sin myself many years ago, in that I would come to a QBR or an account planning conversation already pre-filled out. Things that I want the other side to do, to hear from me on, to even agree to, without involving them much, if at all. So here we are coming to the table, and most of the time it is with good intentions, right? We want to educate, we want to inform, we want to spark dialogue of some kind.
I think, Sylvia, also there's pressure internally on salespeople to produce, right? And to grow their business, to hit their targets. So they proactively go after meetings like a QBR, as you just said, and they'll get in there with their list, as you just said. So, okay, carry on, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the lack of autonomy is a signal that, right, we are not inviting co creation. So I will say this, the lack of autonomy usually leads to some type of low engagement, disengagement even, or lack of clarity, right? In terms of what the other side should be doing, could be doing, needs to be doing going forward. So when we feel resistance or low engagement, that's a sign that the other side likely is feeling a loss of autonomy. So a lot of times I just even counsel account teams, account managers, account executives, account owners in general, and their internal partners to prep for that meeting, for that conversation of the account plan by focusing on the questions that they will ask. So really come to the table with the mindset of we're here to facilitate ideas. We are here to help each other explore other possibilities that may not even be apparent to either side, and less about focusing on prepping factoids. Definitely use data to inform the questions to build smarter, better, higher yield questions. Yet, I would say, Fergal, the one main pivot that I would absolutely suggest everyone to consider is how are you prepping for these meetings? And are you prepping by focusing on what you want to tell instead of prepping for questions that would invite that input from the other side?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So obviously QBR is not a very frequent meeting,
Correct.
usually 4 times a year, right?
Mhm.
But what about in between? So what about the more casual meetings, the conversations you might have in the hallways? There's less time to prep, isn't there? I'm probably leading down my own path here in terms of suggesting that if you have an account plan for your client, that there's an element there of pre-planning and proactivity so that you are ready for those hallway conversations or those casual conversations. Not quite the same way you're talking about in terms of a QBR. I can see that's a lot more structured. But I would imagine that you also need to have a set of questions knocking around in your head, if you like, that if I'm with the client today and I happen to meet so and so, there's a question that I want to ask. Does that form part of your teachings and coachings?
Yeah, absolutely. So one technique that we teach is always be preparing in advance some type of question that you can fire in the moment at the ready. And we do have a framework for that. And the idea there is that, right, when you change your questions, you literally change your life. That is a book, by the way, great book. So, yes, we do teach a framework or a technique, if you will, that will help all of us just in everyday conversations or be ahead of everyday conversations, populate some questions that would be higher yield, higher impact.
Because I think there's a tendency not to be asking questions after a certain point in the relationship with the client because you're engaged, right? You're busy, you're doing work, and the questions may be more related to what's in front of you. This is what I'm doing right now, and you perhaps lose sight of a bigger picture and that growth opportunity that can come from that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one question that I often like to ask, even if I'm just passing somebody or I'm in the elevator with them, right, at a client site, let's say it's a member of the client team on the client side, I should say. So I'll say something like, what are you most looking forward to achieving this week? Right. So instead of how's it going, right? How's the weather? Or, you know, something generic that anyone would ask, I like to invite their thinking even on the spot, right? Even if they're not able to produce a well-crafted, eloquent answer. Most people do, by the way. So even if they go, huh, well, you know what? That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. It sets me up to be differentiated already in their brain to go, wow, she really is caring about who I am, what I do beyond the casual, conventional, how's it going? And most people do go, "Hey, you really got me thinking about this and that." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't even ask about this and that because that didn't come up." But the question opened the brain up to other types of curiosities, right? Other inquiries, lines of inquiries that they might have been asking themselves anyway. I just facilitated more of that thinking by asking a question that interrupts their daily pattern, their status quo, and gets them to go, huh, okay, yeah, I probably should pay attention to that. So that is one high yield question that I absolutely would love to lend to anyone else who wants to try this on for size.
We like to moan about the weather here over this side of the world, so
Same in
definitely.
Chicago, by the way.
Oh, we okay. We share some commonality
We
in there.
sure do. We sure do.
So before we came on, we were chatting, and you mentioned this great word that I haven't heard before. I'm familiar with the word feedback, but you have a different word. Tell me.
Yes, feed forward is the unconventional wisdom to giving feedback. So, yes, that is the, approach that we take here, and that is the pivot, if you were the activator towards co-creation. In that if we only stay in feedback, which is, right, looking at the past, giving comments, review, critique of something that has already happened, right, that most of us probably wouldn't be able to do much about in terms of the past state. So the idea here is how can we prime the brain, everyone's brain in the room, to create or co-create a forward leaning state. Go in a forward direction. Go create a future vision or a much more forward leaning, future leaning joint vision or narrative.
And what have you seen in terms of practical examples of that? So in QBRs, for example, what does that feed forward look like?
Yeah, so one common problem statement that I've heard over the years and have experienced myself even is lower NPS score. And so, one problem or issue that a lot of account managers might be tracking or really paying attention to is the client has now a lower NPS score than they did some time ago, be it 30 days ago, 45 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago, etc. And so a lot of times, leaders, well-meaning leaders would say something like, "Well, we need to lift that up. We need to improve that." Of course. Yet, right, that is a very uncertain, ambiguous, action for the brain. The brain doesn't know, "Okay, yes, we know we wanna get better, yet how? What do we need to do?" And so this is where feed forward becomes really critical and significant in that this is now us asking ourselves, what can we affect? So, what on our side as the provider, as the partner or the solution partner, what can we affect to improve the actions or the motions that would then lift up that NPS score? One potential action area would be, how are we communicating with our clients? So a lot of times, right, it services that the low NPS score is the client feeling not fully engaged, not properly engaged. They don't hear back from us, in the time span that they had expected or been even promised. So something about the velocity, right, of the return phone call, the velocity of that response email, that could be a key factor that we can absolutely do something about, right? We can per se tell the other side to like us more, to want to spend more money with us, yet we can absolutely affect what we put in terms of our actions, our commitments, in this case, to our communication cadence, to our response time, that will play a role, that will be absolutely an integral role in how the client rates us, right? What their NPS, Net Promoter Score, would be. Is one piece of the puzzle, not the entire piece of the puzzle. Yet now we're getting into specific action steps that we can be accountable for and have some ownership around and actual tangible input into.
It leads into a topic that I'm quite interested in is around shortening this sales cycle. You talked about velocity. Now, in terms of shortening that sales cycle, I'm curious, what have you seen in terms of sellers and account teams attempting to do to shorten that sales cycle? What's worked, what maybe hasn't worked for them? It can be quite a challenge when faced with, say, it depends on your business, but if you're in enterprise sales, you might be looking at 6, 9, 12-month sales cycles. And if you could shorten that even by 2 months, it may mean getting your deal in this year rather than next year.
Mhm.
So curious what you're doing in your business around that.
Couple of things. One is we are helping our clients and empowering account executives and account managers to maximize every interaction, every communication that they share or send out to their client. For example, one of my clients, so they had been, let's call it, receiving radio silence from a key logo that they're trying to acquire. So as a future client.
Not an uncommon situation, right?
Absolutely. So, in looking at their outreach emails, I could see why the client is not giving them the time of day. There was really nothing compelling in terms of my client's own understanding of their prospective clients' needs, what might be something urgent, what's even an insight that they may not even be aware of yet. So, again, right, really putting ourselves in the shoes of the end client to go, why would they want to spend time with us? And what would compel them or motivate them or what would align to their reality even that would garner attention. And so I proposed to them that, why don't we try my 3-step messaging method with Part one being really about us aligning our communication to something that they either would have already talked about internally, likely based on whatever is publicly available, or that they may not even be aware of yet. And then the second portion of that approach was really us framing, in this case, the hidden challenges that they might have in trying to meet that goal. So just 2 paragraphs, really nothing about their solution set, their prowess, their expertise, but just really like, here's what we think is happening, or this is what we've seen to be happening in your domain, in your industry, and likely within your 4 walls. And these are some challenges that may not even be self-evident yet, right? Or that are emerging probably as you strive towards this ambition or goal. They heard within the same day. They heard back after months of radio silence.
And I think it's a pivot, isn't it, from self company product focus, that type of messaging, just checking in, did you know about our offer, that type of thing. Those are very self focused messages, to flipping it to what I'd probably call customer issues and then outcomes that you can achieve for the client. So you're pushing a conversation much more in the value, because let's face it, our clients don't care what we do. There's no interest. It's what we can do for them.
So in this case, we, took, say, a sequence of 10 to 12 emails with no response at all to one email, right? One message that invited the corresponding desired response. So right there, talk about velocity, right? Like those 10 to 12 emails were dispersed over a 6 to 8 week period. Right there, we just chopped off that cycle, right? That engagement cycle, that sales cycle right there. Even if we're just reducing it from 2 emails to 1, 4 emails to 1, that is time. That is already time shaved off. So that's what we really focus on here at Brain Cells, in terms of how are we helping our clients drive higher velocity, right, in their selling approach, in their selling motion.
And I want to get back to the name, because you've got brain cells there. So there's some neuroscience in there. If I'm a seller and what I'm trying to do is build trust with my client, and I figure the faster I can build trust, the faster I can start to add some value for both of us. Is there any particular hack that you'd suggest that we can move a little faster in gaining that trust from our clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a dynamic we call in group versus out group. So we as human beings, our ancestors in the Serengeti, were very well tuned to who's in our tribe and who's not. That literally led to our survival as a tribe, right? So, right, these are the confines of our area, right? If someone comes in from the outside, from up there or over there, right, our brains go "Wah, wah, wah, wah," potential threat, potential threat, potential threat. And in today's world, that is the buyer seller dynamic, right? In that a seller is, for all intents and purposes, we as a seller, no matter how well meaning we are, how smart we are, how service oriented we are by default an out group member to our clients. Just by the sheer fact that we don't have the same, email domain as they do, right? By the fact that we do something that they don't do. Right there, we are considered outsiders. And a lot of times I see people over indexing on schmoozing, right? Thinking that if I'm just friendly enough, if I appeal congenial enough, if I appear bubbly enough, right? My personality will shine through. Well, actually, that does not honor how we humans look at other humans. So long as our brain believes that this person is an outsider, we're going to listen less to them right off the bat. We're going to pay attention less to what they have to say, but we're going to pay attention to them in terms of, right, mitigating risk. So that's that example that I shared earlier. That account executive, by opening his email with topics of conversation, aha moments, nuggets of thought that end executive, that end client would likely have already, engaged in, probably percolating to the top of his to-do list. Right away, that puts us ahead of others that are viewed as outgroup. So we may not be fully in group yet. However, right, we look the same, right? Or similar anyway, right? Somewhat familiar, right? There's already some familiarity that's being presented. So instead of us talking about us, we are already coming out of the gate to go, this is probably something that is being discussed in your world. So we are reminding them that we're likely to be less of a threat and more likely to be a helpful in group member than others. So that is one key piece of brain science that I mean, I personally had studied for a really long time in all kinds of interactions. And I wouldn't say it's a hack per se. There's really no magic to it other than us just doing the work to position ourselves to be in that realm, right? In sort of their eyesight, right? As a potential in-group member.
Yeah, and it's all about leading with the client's an understanding, I think, of the client's initiatives so that you can have a conversation like you just described. So if you're armed with that understanding of the client's initiatives and their needs and their pain points, and you start leading with them, then you're probably starting to sound more like, I think you used the phrase in group. You're closer to that than the out group, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was leading business development many years ago, one of the clients that I finally met at an in-person event, she was shocked that I didn't work for them. Like, the client. She was like, "I thought this whole time that you were part of our team." And, like, it wasn't until that I saw, like, on the event badge, like, that you're not with us, that I realized. I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And so that was a pivotal moment, an aha moment for me, for going that they didn't see me as the business developer, right, for so and so and so. This person literally thought I was part of their domain for a full year even. So,
That is
um,
that is interesting. Huh.
yeah, and so that to me was the signal, the proof point that I needed to pursue the work that we are ever developing more of and that we're leading and deploying to our clients.
And so, just before we start to wrap up, I'm really interested because there's a couple of hobbies here that I've seen that you're into, and I really just need to probe a little more. So one is there is it making sake, and then
Yes, so
is that
I
right?
don't make the
Yes.
sake. I taste it and teach people the craft
Oh,
and
hang on, you're
history.
tasting it, right? Okay,
So,
right.
yeah, I do the most enjoyable part, which is the tasting part.
Even better. I love it. And then there's also planes. Are you learning to fly, or you know how to fly? What's going on there?
I have been learning to fly. I need to get back to my
Yeah.
hours. I was just kindly reminded that my logbook is looking a little light these days. So, yes, I am a budding aviatrix. I love airplanes. I love flying. I love aviation. When people ask like, "What did you want to be when you grow up?" And I would say something like either an astronaut or a fighter pilot, right? Like something up in the sky, right? High velocity flying.
High velocity.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
risk taking. Yeah.
So, how do people get in contact with you, Sylvia, if they're interested in learning a little bit more about brain cells? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way would be to email me. So that's Sylvia, Silvia, at BrainSells, so BrainSells.org.
Great. So we'll put them in the show notes. Sylvia, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a terrific conversation. Loved all the different insights that you've shared with us.
Thank you for having me.